Getting a bad review on Upwork sucks. In this video, I'll show you how you can avoid them, what to do if you get stuck with a bad review to limit the damage it does to your profile and quickly get your JSS back up, and finally, how Upwork calculates your job success score so you actually understand it and you're no longer in the dark. My name is Nico Hessel, and I've made over $100,000 on Upwork while traveling the world. And recently, I got my first ever review that was not 5 stars. So I figured I'd make this YouTube video and teach you what to do if this happens to you. Now first, I'm gonna go over what you can do so your client isn't even allowed to leave you a bad review, right? So if you're doing a project and you can kind of sense like, hey, this might not be going the best, maybe the client's kind of rude, he's kind of already angry and you're not even done yet. If it's a small project, just refund them. It's by far the easiest thing to do. If you can tell they're upset and they're angry and they're mad, like just give them a refund and move on. It is not worth a bad review on Upwork for a $100 contract, a $200 contract. Now, next in a second, I'll walk you through kind of how to figure out at what point it is or is not worth giving them a refund. But if it's a small project, just refund them. And the reason you do this is because if a contract is $0 in earnings on Upwork, the client cannot leave you a public review. Now that being said, they can leave you a private review. And again, I'm gonna talk about the different kinds of reviews and JSS a little bit later in this video. But ultimately, if the contract has $0 in value, they cannot leave you a public review, right? So they can't write, bad things about you. They can't leave you a review out of 5 stars. That'll show up on your profile. And so that is by far the easiest thing to do. Now, as you can see on my screen right here, what we're gonna do is if you're in an agency account, you're gonna go to deliver work, you're gonna click on your clients, and then you're just gonna scroll down and you're going to pick the client who's, angry in this situation, right? So I'm gonna go search his name up. You can see right here, it pops right up. I'm gonna just click on this contract, click on the title. Then I'm gonna click over on all the way on the right-hand side, these 3 dots in the top right corner. I'm gonna click them. And you can see I can just press give a refund. And then I'll be brought to a screen where I can leave him a full refund. And like I just mentioned, if you give a full refund, he cannot leave you a bad public review. It is not an option for him. And so if you have a small contract, right, $100, $200, and you already have, obviously the exact amount is just relative depending on how much you're currently making. But if it's relatively pretty small, then just give them a refund and move on, right? It's not worth having a bad public review on your profile for $10, $100, right? Now that being said, if it is a little bit larger of a contract, you might not want to immediately give him a refund or her, right? That's gonna be pretty costly. You should be able to refund the contract even after they end it. And so if you end it and you wanna see if they leave you a bad review, you can see what happens, and then you can refund the contract fully if they do leave you a bad review in most cases, right? Now that being said, let's say it's a big contract, they leave you a bad review, you don't want to refund it. What you can do is you are going to go to, you can see I'm on my profile right now, right? So go to your Upwork profile. This is the review in question, right? So again, for me, it's not a bad review, it's 4 stars, but it's the first review we've ever gotten that's not, you can see here, that's not 5 stars, right? Everything else is 5 stars. So the next thing you want to do is you want to respond to this review, right? And basically, and I'll show you how to do this in a second, but basically what you want to do is you want to give the world some context, right? And you don't want to be rude, you don't want to be mean, you don't want to attack them, right? You want to basically just, again, give everybody context as to why they may have left this bad review. Now, I'm going to give you some context and walk you through my response to their non-5-star review, or their 4-star review. So this just says, had to work through a lot of revisions, would highly recommend sending clear references as to what type of content you want. Right? So again, it's not a horrible review, but it's not very positive, right? That's not like a good thing, right? And again, we're a video editing agency, so this is what that's in reference to, a short form video. This is my response. Hey Talia, sorry to hear you didn't have a 5-star experience with us. This is our first review that isn't 5 stars, and I'm sorry to hear that. What you mentioned is true. We went through 9 revisions for you without any additional charge. When you first messaged us, you mentioned you knew exactly what you wanted, but after a few rounds of revisions, the vision seemed to have shifted. Regardless, I hope the video performs well, and I wish you all the best. So it's really professional, right? It's not attacking them, it's not being rude, it's not saying, hey, you guys suck, you're an idiot, right? It's just giving context as to what happened. And it's all true. They asked for 9 revisions on one 60-second video, which is crazy, right? And so I'm just telling everyone what happened. And I think if a potential client sees this, they're not gonna think, oh, Nico's doing a horrible job or whatever. They're gonna think, oh, look at this very professional response, and doing 9 revisions for no additional charge is actually, like, that's crazy. Like, good for Nico. Like, that makes me look professional and just like a good guy, right? And so this is the first thing to do. And the way you do this, right? You're gonna go to your messages and you're gonna find the messages with the people who left that bad review for you. And you can see when they end the contract or when you end the contract, you just click on view contract. And then you're gonna go to contract details. And then on the right-hand side, you can see I wrote a response. Now, if you have not written a response, right, to their bad review, you'll just have a little button right here that'll say respond to feedback, and you can leave that response, right? And then like I just showed you, it's gonna show up on your profile to give the world a little bit of context. Now, there's one other thing that we wanna do if, again, you didn't wanna refund their contract and you already replied to the feedback like I just showed you. The next thing we wanna do is we wanna cover up this bad review. So we wanna get a bunch more reviews, good reviews, very quickly. And so, as you can see here, as I'm loading up my profile, one thing that I've done that I've been really, glad that I did is you can see I have 21 jobs that are in progress here. We do not all 21 of these jobs are actually in progress. Lots of them are finished, right? And the reason we intentionally kept them as in progress and we did not end the contract and ask for a good review is because we like to keep 5, 10, or 15 kind of open contracts where we finish the job, but we leave the contract open in case somebody ever leaves us a bad review. We can then go to these 5, 10 people and we can ask them to end our contract and leave a good review, right? To kind of cover it up, right? Does that make sense, right? So as you can see here, they left the 4-star review on September 26th. That same day, right, I reached out to like 5 of our past clients, again, who had jobs that were still in progress, but we had actually finished the job. We just hadn't ended the contract. And I said, hey, it was great working with you. Is it okay if we end this contract and if you leave us a 5-star review? We'd really, really, really appreciate it. And so then you could see we got 2 pretty in-depth reviews. Like this one's 5, a full paragraph on the same day that got that bad review. And this one, 3 or 4 days later, is like a 4-paragraph review, right? It's a super, super solid review. And so what this does, it does a couple different things. Number one, it gets our JSS back up and up and up, right? Kind of helps us recover it if your JSS took a big dip. And number 2, it helps us kind of hide that bad review, right? Because if you got a bad review, like a really bad review, even if you respond to it, you don't want it sitting at the top, right? That's not a great look, right? So we kind of want to hide it. We kind of want to bury it a little bit. And now if you go to my profile, like you can see, we have a really big, really, really great review at first, and then we have a second review that's really, really solid. And then after that, you get to the 3rd review, which is the 4-star review. But you can see how this kind of hides it and just kind of covers it up a little bit, right? Now that being said, I leave all of these contracts open in progress because I already have 20 or 30 5-star reviews. I have a lot of 5-star reviews, right? And so going from having 20 5-star reviews to 21 5-star reviews, it's not gonna make a huge difference. It's not gonna, massively improve the conversion rate of my profile. But if you only have 1 good review, right? Don't let these jobs sit in progress. Just end them and get that 2nd good review, 3rd good review, 4th good review, etc. Right? I only recommend kind of banking them, right, and leaving contracts in progress that are actually finished if you already have at least maybe 10 5-star reviews, let's say, right? You have a good amount of 5-star reviews already that are written, right? You have that social proof on your profile. All right. Now, if you got a bad review and you don't have any contracts that are in progress right now, there are 2 things you could do. Number 1, you could have a client who you currently are billing outside of Upwork just hire you on Upwork, right? So if you currently met a client through networking, whatever, you're billing them outside of Upwork, you could have them hire you on Upwork, right? And what's important here, and I'm gonna get to this in a second about how JSS is actually calculated, right? How Upwork actually calculates it. But what's important here is you wanna make sure the contract is over $251. It's over $251, right? And you can just have them send you a contract for $260 or whatever, end the contract, leave you a 5-star review, and then send you a new contract for another, whatever, $250, $300, whatever it is, leave you a good review, and then end the contract, leave you another good review, right? And that's kind of how you can kind of cover up this bad review if you don't have any contracts that are in progress. Now I want to move into how JSS is actually calculated, right? How Upwork actually calculates this on their end. So when I end a contract, right now I'm in my client account, right? When I end a contract with a freelancer on Upwork, there are 3 different types of feedback that I leave that get taken into account when Upwork calculates JSS. So the first one is called private feedback, right? This is where Upwork's just asking me as the client how likely I am to recommend this freelancer to a friend or colleague, right? I can click 0, that's gonna hurt the JSS of this freelancer, or I can click 10, or I can click anything in between, right? It all impacts the freelancer's JSS. Now, this is the reason why I said before, even if you refund a contract, it could still hurt your JSS. Because if you refund a contract, if the contract has $0 in earnings on Upwork, the client cannot leave you public feedback, right? As you can see down here, I cannot, the client would not be able to leave public feedback, but they still would have to leave private feedback, right? They'd be prompted to leave this private feedback. And so still, you know, if the contract went really poorly and then you had to give them a full refund, they're probably not gonna leave you good private feedback, right? They're probably gonna rank you pretty low on the scale of 1 to 10, and your JSS will probably still take a little hit. That being said, at least you don't have a really bad written review in your profile, right? It's way worse to have a bad written review on the profile. But this is the first type of feedback that gets taken into account when calculating JSS, private feedback, right? The second type is Upwork's gonna ask the client what the primary reason for ending this contract is, right? And you can see they have 5 or 6 different options, right? Project completed successfully, there's a problem working with this freelancer, budget or pricing concerns, the contract isn't needed anymore, the freelancer isn't available, right? Or changes to this contract are needed, right? And so this will also impact the JSS, right? If the client selects there's a problem working with this freelancer, that will impact the freelancer's job success score, right? Your job success score. Now, the unfortunate thing is Upwork doesn't tell us exactly percentage-wise, like what percentage of this feedback is taken into account when calculating the full JSS, right? So they don't tell us, hey, when calculating your JSS, we're gonna take a third of the calculation is gonna be from private feedback, a third is gonna be from this primary reason, right? And a third is gonna be from public. They don't tell us that, so we don't really know. But these are the 3 elements that do impact it, right? So the first one is private feedback, second one is the primary reason for ending the contract, and the third one is obviously the written review, right? You can see here, I can leave this person a review out of 5 stars, and then I get to share my experience with the Upwork community, right? Which is basically just the written review, right? And so the written review itself won't impact the job success score, but the rating out of 5 stars will. And so as you can see on my client screen, that is what this looks like. And interestingly enough, normally for my client account, I haven't ended a contract in maybe a month or 2, but normally I have like 5 or 6 different sections that I can rate this freelancer, right? I don't just get a rating out of 5 stars. Usually I rate them, out of like 25 stars, and then Upwork calculates it into a 5-star review, right? But this one's only showing 5 stars, which is interesting. So with that being said, now those are the 3 things that do actually impact JSS. Now what I wanna do next is I wanna go over the calculation for it, right? So like I said, we don't know the full picture here. Upwork doesn't tell us what percentage is private feedback, is that kind of question of, what was the result, what was the reason this contract's ending, and the public feedback. Upwork doesn't tell us the percentage breakdown, but we do know a couple other things. So I want to take out my iPad here and I'm going to draw this out. All right, so basically there are 4 separate calculations that Upwork does to calculate the total JSS. So the first one is your JSS in the last 6 months, right? Then they're going to calculate your JSS from 6 months ago to 18 months ago. Then they're going to calculate your JSS from 18 months ago to 24 months ago, and then they're going to do kind of a total aggregate, right, JSS. And these are the 4 different calculations that they're going to use to ultimately calculate your real JSS. Now, the reason this is important is because if you all of a sudden one day wake up and you're like, my JSS like dropped a little bit randomly, and you don't think you got, bad feedback anytime soon, this could be what has happened, right? So let's say this is today, and this is, we'll say 6 months ago, and this is going to be 18 months ago, and then this is going to be 24 months ago. So let's say you got a bad review right here, right? And let's say you got a bunch of really good reviews, right after it, right? Now, ultimately, as time goes on, and let's say you have no reviews, right? We'll do yellow for that. You have no reviews in this period. Over time, this bad review, this red review right here, is going to move into this 6 to 18 month like category, right? And so ultimately, right, let's say you had, the JSS from 0 to 6 months was 99%, right? Let's say, you had lots and lots and lots of good reviews and you had 1 bad review. Well, eventually when this bad review moves into this category, it's gonna be a loan. So you're just gonna have this category will be, I'm just gonna pretend this is a 0-star review, right? So this category would then be 0%, and this one would be 100%, right? And so that's why basically sometimes people see like a minor little shift. Usually it's not a ginormous one, but sometimes like a minor little shift randomly one morning. This is the reason why, right? Because your reviews are shifting categories, right? And so that's also why it's really important, like when you do get that bad review, we want to very quickly kind of cover it up, right? For this reason, right? Because in this scenario, right, the person who got a bad review and then got a bunch of good reviews, right? Yes, this bad review is going to move into this second category, 6 months to 18 months, right? But then very, very shortly after, all of the good reviews are also going to move into this category, right? So they're going to be able to probably see, this person would probably see a slight drop in JSS, and then JSS would go up and up and up and up, right? So this is basically how Upwork calculates, job success score, and this is the reason that, if you all of a sudden see a little drop, right, this is why it would be happening. Now, there are a couple other things that are important to note that do impact JSS and kind of the weight of each review. So if your review is more than $250, like I said, $251, then it is weighted as 1.25 reviews, right? So it's weighted as 25% more than your average review. Now, if your contract is over, I believe it's $1,001, it's going to be weighted as 1.5 reviews. So it's weighted as 50% more, right, than your average contract on Upwork. There are also kind of increases in weight of contract when it comes to the length of the contract, right? So the cool thing about this is if you do have long-term clients on Upwork, right, when they ultimately leave you a review, it's going to be worth a lot more. And the reason is every 90 days, right, assuming that they're consistently making payments, right, every 90 days, it will be counted as an extra review. And so I'll give you an example here. If I sign a client today, right, and 90 days later, they are still paying me, right? And then 90 days later, they are still paying me, right? And then 90 days later, they are still paying me. And then they end the contract, right? This is going to count as 3 reviews, right? It's going to be weighted as like 300%, right? It's going to be weighted as 3 reviews instead of just 1 review, right? And the reason is this was a 270-day contract, right? Day 0, day 90, day 180, day 270 right here, right? And assuming they were making, it doesn't have to be payments every single day, but it does have to be, they have to have 1 payment within this 90-day period, 1 payment within this one, with this one, right? And I believe the maximum is 8, right? So you could, in theory, if you had a client stay with you 8 times 90 days, which is 720 days, right? So almost 2 years, right? Actually, yeah, about 2 years, right? Over 2 years. If you had a client stay with you 2 full years and they were paying you consistently every single 90 days, that would be worth 8 reviews once they leave you a review on your profile. So kind of cool stuff, right? Definitely pays, in terms of JSS to keep your clients, keep them happy, keep them paying you, right? And then ultimately when they do leave reviews, it'll be more valuable. So with that being said, that is all I've got for today's video, guys. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave a comment, leave a like. Let me know what else you want to see. I'm going to be trying to put out a lot more YouTube videos in the coming months here as I dive back in. So if you want something specific, comment down below and I'll see you in the next video.